What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Embody Radio, the premier podcast for high-performing humans looking to develop their unique formula for truly embodying their happiest, healthiest, highest selves. I'm your host, Emily Duncan, and we are back. We are back for another episode. It is Thursday when you are listening to this, not when I'm recording this, but it's Thursday. Or maybe it's not Thursday when you're listening to this, but episodes come out on Thursday. So whatever day it is, happy Thursday or happy day. Don't care. We're here. We're doing a podcast. So energy check, since I know last week I said I would start doing those in the podcast more. Energy check for this week is there is not much of one because I am sick and my energy is zapped. So without warning, like literally no warning, I woke up yesterday, sore throat, very stuffy nose, sinuses blocked up to hell, fatigue, body aches, the whole situation, a little bit of nausea. It's not a fun time. So my energy is currently zapped. So that's where we're at for our energy check of the week. But we are here on the podcast. Also, I'm very sorry for that loud sniffle I just gave you. Note to self, if you have to sniffle through the rest of this episode, turn your head away from the mic because I'm sure that was very loud. But we're here. We're back for another episode. And we are here for a solo episode. And I have sat on this one for a very long time. But we're here. We're here now and we're doing it. And today we are diving into my relationship to and journey with alcohol. And part of why I wanted to do this episode now is, January is almost over, but a lot of people are talking about dry January and this, that, the other thing. And I just know that there's a lot of people out there that are curious about reevaluating their relationship with alcohol. And so if sharing my experience and my story and kind of where I'm at provides any insight or perspective or clarity or solidarity to anyone, then, I am happy to share it. So, content note, I do touch on trauma and the use of alcohol in this episode. So if there are particularly sensitive topics for you, please take note and listen or don't listen accordingly. And I know that everyone's relationship with alcohol is different. So this is just my personal experience. And before we dive into my own experience, which obviously provides a little context on my own bias on why I'm not a huge fan of alcohol, I want to take a second to touch on the objective versus the subjective, aka the actual hard facts about alcohol and how it impacts your health. Now, I know that the Huberman Lab episode on alcohol this past, I think it was like late summer, early fall, really just turned everyone's worlds upside down, which I think was a great thing because in that episode, he really laid out the facts on alcohol and even small amounts of alcohol. Like I think a lot of people had the misconception that only heavy drinking or binge drinking was enough to provide a serious negative health effect. But as he laid out in that episode, and if you haven't listened to it yet, please listen to it because I think it's something that literally every single person should listen to so that they know and they are aware. We're not told this in this depth, but even light to moderate alcohol consumption can have negative health effects. So before we get again into my personal experience, I want to give some of just the objective data on it. And again, go listen to that episode of Huberman Lab. He goes a lot more in depth. I'm just going to kind of give some of the information that I have presented most frequently to clients. I've been a fitness and health coach for over 7 years, and obviously working with people in the real world. People want to drink and, all of that stuff. And I'm never here to tell anyone what to do or not to do or what to put in their bodies or not to put in their bodies. It's just my role to educate. I'm not your mom. I'm just here to, and hopefully your mom isn't still making decisions for you. You're a sovereign adult, but I am not you. I can't make your decisions for you, but if I can provide you with information, then that's what I'm here to do. So I'm going to do information and then experience. So number one, first and foremost, alcohol is a neurotoxin. Neurotoxin is science talk for brain poison. So, every time you drink alcohol, you are consciously consuming something that damages your brain. Even light amounts of drinking, so a few drinks per week, can have neurotoxic effects. Not just larger amounts of drinking like we previously thought, or some of us previously thought. Heavy drinking changes the structure and size of your brain in a cognitively damaging way, and even just a few glasses of beer or wine per week can reduce your overall brain volume. That's a pretty obvious one for your overall health. So first and foremost, alcohol is a neurotoxin. 2, alcohol impairs decision-making, which can directly affect your health and fitness. So obviously I'm talking about this more in the lens of health and fitness because that is the realm that I've worked in the most. And I think it's obvious when we're talking about impaired decision making, like, oh, drunk texting your ex or connecting with someone at the bar that you normally wouldn't have. Like, all of those things we more readily associate with impaired decision making. But when it comes to health and fitness, people don't necessarily think of this as readily. So tell me if this sounds familiar. I mean, I know you can't tell me because you're listening to this podcast and I've already recorded it. Whatever. But does this sound familiar? You are out at the bar with friends. One drink turns into another, which turns into multiple rounds of shots, which turns into drunkenly eating burgers and pizza and wings. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with eating burgers and pizza and wings whatsoever. But if you have health and fitness goals, regularly making food choices that aren't in alignment with the goals that you have is going to make them harder to reach. So, impaired decision making. Number 3, alcohol does have caloric value. So alcohol is not a 0-calorie substance. And when we talk about the respective caloric values of macronutrients, so protein, fats, and carbs, protein has 4 calories per gram, carbs have 4 calories per gram, and fats have 9 calories per gram. Alcohol has 7 calories per gram. So it sits on that higher end. And the average alcoholic beverage is going to be around 100 to 150 calories of just alcohol. AKA if you get like a cocktail or a mixed drink that has syrups or juices or other calorie containing add-ins, those are on top of the alcohol calories in the drink. And calories are not something to be scared of. They're just something to be conscious of. If you're knocking out, 2 to 3 glasses of wine in a night that are 125 calories each, that's 375 extra calories in a day. And you can see where that would easily snowball when combined with the second point of just the impaired decision making, particularly around food choices, where you're not only getting extra calories from alcohol, but you're also getting extra calories from the food choices that often accompany drinking. So it's kind of like a snowball effect. Number 4. Alcohol interferes with your dopamine system. So dopamine is one of our feel-good chemicals, and we release it when we anticipate a reward. When you first drink alcohol, your dopamine levels get an initial boost. That's part of why you may find yourself wondering, if it's so bad for me, why do I feel good when I drink? Which is also a whole different conversation on the mechanisms through which alcohol, quote unquote, releases your inhibitions, not in the Natasha Bedingfield, feel the rain on your skin kind of way. But after a period of time of consistent drinking, your brain adapts and your dopamine levels actually drop pretty significantly. And this has some pretty strong mental health implications and can also play a role in addiction, which is far beyond the scope of this conversation. But if you are struggling with addiction, please reach out to the appropriate support team or call 1-800-662-HELP. Again, that is out of the scope of the context of this conversation, but it is a very serious thing. So reach out to the appropriate support team if that is something that you are struggling with. Number 5, and this one is a personal favorite because I am a fitness and health coach, but number 5, alcohol interferes with nutrient metabolism. This is the one that typically shocks people the most. Because alcohol is a neurotoxin, when it enters your bloodstream, your body's first priority becomes, how do I get this out of my system? So your body starts focusing on metabolizing the alcohol and excreting it. And when this happens, the metabolism of macronutrients like proteins, fats, and carbs is blunted because it's now of lesser importance. So this can lead to things like blunted protein synthesis, which is not great for building muscle and repairing muscle, particularly if you drink regularly, and a higher chance of storing dietary fat as body fat. And you see how that compounded with number 2, the increased consumption of fatty foods after drinking and the higher propensity to store dietary fat as body fat equals not great if you have fat loss goals. So alcohol interferes with your nutrient metabolism. And number 6, alcohol messes with your sleep. So sleep is one of our body's biggest forms of recovery, not just for our fitness goals, but for general health, longevity, disease prevention, quality of life. And not only is alcohol often behaviorally associated with late nights and decreased sleep, but it actually alters your body's natural sleep cycle. So alcohol can cause insomnia, which contributes to high fatigue in the successive days. It also interferes with REM sleep, so rapid eye movement sleep, which is important for your learning and your memory, both in terms of making and retaining memories. And alcohol consumption can also increase the risk of sleep apnea, which is a breathing disorder where you breathe abnormally and temporarily stop breathing while you sleep. So long story short, alcohol robs you of quality sleep at best and can contribute to larger sleep-related issues at worst. And I could go on. There are plenty of other things that we could talk about the downsides of alcohol from a factual, data perspective, but I will just tell you again, go and listen to episode 86 of Huberman Lab. He goes into a lot of detail, covers a lot of ground, and it is a very long episode. And I know a lot of this sounds shitty, and truthfully, it is. It is. Because in short, when it comes to physical and mental health, the research indicates basically no positives and mostly all detriments when it comes to drinking, which when Huberman did that episode, it ruffled a lot of feathers given how pervasive alcohol is in our culture. But again, I think it's a really important information to know. And I get it. Some people really enjoy drinking and there's absolutely no judgment there. How you choose to live your life is not my business. As long as you're not doing any harm to anyone else or yourself, which arguably drinking alcohol is you doing harm to yourself, whatever. Again, not my business. Some people just really enjoy it. I'm not judging you either way. But enjoyment aside, when we look objectively at the information in front of us, it's just straight up bad for our health. And the longer we ignore that, the worse the problem gets. Whether it's poor decision making, doing or saying things we regret, feeling mentally and physically shitty in the following days, the negative impact on our health and fitness, or really anything in between, the math on alcohol does not seem to add up to a net positive. And once again, I am not your mom. I am not here to make decisions for you or tell you what to do. But my personal advice as a health professional and as a human being is to keep alcohol consumption to a bare minimum, even if it's just for health reasons, not even for like the personal experience reasons that I'm about to get into. Or if you're feeling called to, just remove it entirely. I can honestly say my life is significantly better without it. So that's the objective. Now let's get into the personal part. So, a little over a decade ago, so when I was in late high school, I experienced my first big T trauma. And I don't go into specifics about what it was online because I believe in boundaries and privacy. And at this point in my life, it's not something I'm comfortable getting into the details about online. I mean, there's people in my close family that don't even know about it. And it's also something that I didn't really realize the full effects of or start really processing until I was in my mid to late 20s, which is where I still am now. I'm 27. So the journey of trauma recovery is still a very new one. And for me, it's very fresh. So I keep details private because we all have that right, public platform or not. But anyway, so late high school, went through my first big T trauma. And in high school, I was very much so a quote unquote good girl / good kid, very straight edge, didn't go to parties, stayed in my lane, got good grades, did my extracurriculars, minded my business, and didn't drink until I did. And a few months after my traumatic event, I drank alcohol for the first time. And I vividly remember it. I was at a friend's house and their parents were away and we were making mixed drinks with vitamin water zero and just sitting by the pool, quote unquote harmless. But day turned into night and a chill pool day turned into a house party and I kept drinking. And aside from going downstairs to the piano and playing and singing Lady Gaga, like any good performer would, one of the main things I remember from that night was the escapism that I felt. For the first time since that traumatic event happened a few months prior, I was able to detach and sort of dissociate from what had happened a few months before. And when I drank, I wasn't thinking about what happened to me, at least not until a few hours later when the buzz wore off and I was hit with the memories and the weight of them like a freight train. But that like brief period where I got to escape that and essentially become a different person, become a person without that thing, that felt pretty good. And then that fall, that was in the summer, so that fall I accepted an invitation to a homecoming party at one of my friends' houses. And I had never been to an after party before, and this was with the quote unquote cool kids. So I went. Backstory as to why that's significant. When I was in high school, I wasn't really like part of anyone's social group. I was more of a floater. Like I could float around from group to group. Like being on dance team was quote unquote cool and I was on dance team, but like being in choir was kind of nerdy and weird. So I was also kind of nerdy and weird. And I fit in with like the theater kids and I fit in with the smart kids. So like I was a floater. I didn't really have one set group of people. So going to this party with the cool kids, that was like a big deal. So I vividly remember that night walking down the cul-de-sac towards my friend's house with the signature brown paper bag in hand and a giant lump of nerves in my throat. Whether that was nerves from breaking the rules, I am an Enneagram 1, we don't do well with that, but breaking the rules, lying to my family, feeling not good about what I was about to do. It was probably a combination of all of those things, but giant lump in my throat, walking down the street. Then I walked into the house to a group of my classmates and I kind of shrugged as I raised the brown paper bag in my hand. And I will never forget one of the boys shouting, "M-Dunk's drinking?" Followed by cheers from the crowd. And yes, the nickname M-Dunk has been around since high school. I actually got it by one of my dance teammates. Anyway, so big cheers. Everybody's excited that the good kid is drinking. And in my mind, I'm like, yo, so you mean I can temporarily dissociate from painful memories and gain acceptance from my peers all at the same time? Amazing. And for the record, also, if you can't tell, I joke with humor. What the fuck? That's the same thing. I cope with humor. There we go. We're working on it. But for the record, that night was not amazing. And I went to sleep feeling so sick that my dramatic and also very paranoid self was so terrified that I would not wake up the next day. Like, I had a considerable amount of alcohol. I was so terrified that I actually made myself throw up before I fell asleep. Like, I was that scared. But yeah, even in just those two first instances where I drank, I felt a detachment from myself. And even though I was quote unquote fitting in with my peers, I didn't like myself or how I felt when I was doing it. And that was a really shitty feeling. I've always been, even as a young person, a very self-aware person in the sense that I am very aware of what is and isn't in alignment with my soul. And I think one of the big differences between, I'm getting a little emotional. I think one of the big differences between Emily at 27 and late high school Emily is 27-year-old Emily is not willing to risk what's in alignment with her soul for the love or approval of other people. But late high school Emily was, because she just wanted to be loved really bad. Yeah. So sitting with those shitty feelings. But shortly after that time in my life, this is one of the instances where I truly say and mean that fitness saved my life. Shortly after that time in my life, I started really getting into health and fitness. I'd kind of started the year prior, but that particular year after was when I really dove headfirst into it, before I went off to college. And as a result, along with it being illegal and difficult to procure when it is illegal for you, but just more so naturally because I was becoming passionate about other things, aka health and fitness, it just sort of naturally started fading into the background. Like, it wasn't really something I participated much in. And when I went off to college, a lot of you guys know my college story. I did not drink really in college. The beginning part of my college life, I was in a somewhat controlling relationship where I was not allowed to go out and I was not allowed to make friends. So I don't necessarily think that was positive, but I wasn't drinking. So that was positive. But yeah, alcohol wasn't really a big part of my life between ages of 18 and 21. And when I was of legal drinking age, I would have a glass of wine or a nice cocktail here and there, and I felt fine doing so. But competing in bodybuilding, which I started doing when I was 18, I would go for long stretches of time without drinking alcohol because I was in prep, often over a year at a time. And I didn't really feel like I was missing out on anything. It's not something that I overly enjoyed the taste of or craved. And, it's not like I was giving up sushi or oatmeal or something. That would be a cosmic event in my personal universe. But I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. So I would have some here and there. I used to be really into having wine at home when I first moved to Louisville. But I even think as I reflect back, I still think that part of my, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but like part of my participation in alcohol, even when it was legal, was just to like fit in with the culture of people participating in alcohol, you know, like wine culture and this, that, the other thing. Like, I think some of it was genuine and like just having fun, like exploring that since it's legal for you now and blah, 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 blah. But like, it's still never really something that I'm like, yo, I get so much joy and fulfillment out of this. Like, it was never that. Then at 25, I started going to therapy to work through trauma. And it's funny, the inciting event, if you will, for why I started seeking trauma therapy was not actually the original trauma from when I was in late high school. It was from different things that I wanted to work through, but that ultimately led me down the path of starting to unpack the other trauma, which is often how it goes in my experience and from what I've learned. But at 25, I started going to therapy to work through trauma. And at that point, I wasn't fully against alcohol, but it was kind of the beginning of me peeling back the onion of the things that I've been through in my life. And holy fuck, did it blast my brain open. Holy fuck, did it blast my brain open. So started going to trauma therapy. And in my experience, a huge part of trauma recovery is how much you go back and relive it. And like when the holes in your memory aren't as holy anymore and start to have memories in them. If you're not familiar with trauma, a lot of like one of the big characteristic things of trauma is like fragmented or broken or just complete lack of memory of the experience, because your body will remove you from the experience so that you do not remember what happened to you. But part of my journey has been going back and through various modalities, filling the holes, if you will. And when you do that, or when I have done that, it has been like going back and picking at a scab from a wound and you start bleeding all over again. And through that process and that journey, anytime I consumed alcohol made all of that much worse. And also as I've gone along that journey, I just at the same time, like not because of going through trauma therapy, but just because of my like curious nature, I simultaneously started really paying more attention to the actual physiological mechanisms at play when you drink. And I think part of this is because I'm a health and fitness coach, and like because I have clients that drink more regularly than I did, I just started looking more into it, because when you don't really drink much, you're not like looking into the effects as much. And I wanted to be able to educate clients on it as much as I could. And again, just a really curious person. But just starting to pay more attention to the things happening to your brain and your body when you drink, even if it's just one drink. And the things that I found were not great. And like, I know we already covered a lot of those, so I won't go back in. But as somebody who really fucking loves life and wants to live it as vibrantly as possible for as long as possible, coupled with the fact that drinking isn't something I really deeply enjoy or find adds value to my life, I just kind of started scratching my head. And throughout this journey, this multi-sided journey, there have obviously been some instances where I consciously participated in alcohol again. Like whether, I was on vacation or just a dinner out with friends or whatever. And on the physical side, I just feel like shit when I drink. Like, even if it's just one. All mental, emotional effects aside, physically, I feel like absolute ass when I drink alcohol. And I don't like feeling like absolute ass. It's not my jam. I don't thrive in that space. I don't think anyone does. But like my sleep sucks that night. My heart races. I'm anxious. My mood plummets. I make decisions I probably wouldn't make otherwise. And I'm just not truly 100% authentically me. And that is the most important thing. I don't want to be detached from myself, because I genuinely love who this person is. I genuinely love me. And I also noticed that I really was only consuming alcohol in group settings, which also got me thinking. I asked myself, if I was alone, whether it be at home or taking myself out on a date, would I be participating in this? And that answer was a net overall no. And then after that, I went down the rabbit hole of how drinking and alcohol has become such a like pervasive aesthetic in and of itself. Like all of the, it girl Pinterest photos with wine or cocktails or this, that, and the other thing that are sort of like subliminal messaging that if you participate in this, you're cool or you're a vibe or whatever. And that by literally participating in a neurotoxin, you're more likely to fit in or be a vibe or be an aesthetic. And I've definitely shared like photos like that before, like in mood boards that I used to do, whatever. And like, I'm just way more conscious of that now because like that messaging fucking sucks. It fucking sucks like so much. And so when I combined that thought, AKA the almost insidious nature and the very pervasive or persuasive, not pervasive, I guess it is pervasive, but persuasive nature of alcohol and how it's marketed, combined with the fact that even in small amounts, it's a neurotoxin. That just did not sit right with me. And I'm not saying that anyone who drinks alcohol is a bad person or is destined to experience a shitty quality of life or this, that, the other thing, but like, and I'm sure that there are things that I do but genuinely enjoy that aren't entirely holy either. But this one in particular really got me. And I think it got me because it took me back to that younger version of me who was really hurting from some things that happened in life and who fell under the spell that alcohol could not only help me forget the shitty things that I'd been through, but would also make me fit in with the people around me. And my heart just kind of cracked. And I don't want to be around people who create an environment where if you aren't participating in a substance, you're not one of them. I don't like that. That's not real love. That's not real friendship. If the people in your life are peer pressuring you to participate in something after you've said no one time, fuck that. Fuck that so hard. That's so disrespectful. And it's not their business. It doesn't, like what you put in your body is not somebody else's business. Like, oh, I could go on that one forever. Like, nothing bothers me more than the people that try and pressure other people to drink or to do what they're doing just to make themselves feel better. Like, no, I am entirely fun and woohoo without alcohol. Like if your reasoning is because you want me to be on the same level as you, I don't need the alcohol for that. I'm already on that level just organically with water or a Diet Coke. Like I'm already there. Take a look around. I'm the sunshine in your hair. I'm the shadow on the ground. Like what? Why do I do this? But anyway, I don't want to be around people who create an environment of pressuring you to do things that you don't want to do just to fit in with them. That's fucked. And I also don't want to try and run from the reality that is my life and my experiences temporarily, only to be hit even harder by them later. And I don't want to try to numb myself to my feelings or make choices I'm not proud of or be someone that isn't 100% authentically me. And not all, but a lot of the times I've participated in alcohol have been to remove myself from my life or to try and fit and blend in with the people around me. And that's so against everything that I stand for. Everything that I stand for. Because I stand for authenticity. And the more I thought about it, and continue to think about it, alcohol is not an authentic part of my life. And maybe this isn't a forever thing and I will participate in alcohol again in the future on my terms. You know, I've done that before, but ultimately wound back up in this place where I'm really completely cool and happy and healthy and whole without it. And like every time I would go back, like after a period of not drinking, I'd be like, why did I do this? Why did I come back to this? Like, no, this is just not, it's just not for me. But for now, I'm here to let you know that if you don't want to participate in drinking culture, if you don't resonate with alcohol, but have felt pressure to partake in it because of the environment you're in, or if you're reevaluating your relationship with drinking and want to remove it from your life, that you have a home, that you fit in somewhere. And from someone that has been nicknamed affectionately the Vibe Queen by her friends, let it be known. You can absolutely be a motherfucking vibe with a kick-ass aesthetic without alcohol in the literal or metaphorical picture. Like, 100%, you can do it. I think you should do it. Actually, I can't say that. I can't say you should do it because I'm not telling you what to do. But you can be a motherfucking vibe without alcohol. You don't need it to be a vibe. You are the vibe. That's it. And I think Gen Z is doing a really amazing job, at least from what I've seen, of just normalizing sober, curious culture in like a very not in your face way. Like I've just seen, the more I've been on TikTok, I've just seen a lot of seemingly Gen Z specific people being very just kind of nonchalant about not drinking alcohol. Like it's not even a big thing, which I know is ironic because I'm recording a whole podcast about it now, but I try and be as nonchalant about it as possible in the rest of my life to normalize not drinking. But I think they're just doing a great job of normalizing like sober, curious culture. And whether you want to call yourself sober or just say you're somebody that doesn't drink, that's more of what I do. Is I'm just like, yeah, I just don't drink. I want to cheer them on for that. I think that's awesome. And again, like I wouldn't personally call myself sober, but just someone who chooses in this season of life to not participate in alcohol. Like, give me a Diet Coke or a chamomile tea or a mocktail or a sparkling water with lime, and I am fucking good. I'm good. And I'm still ready to vibe. I'm going to go home in a reasonable hour because that's just who I am as a person. But I'm ready to vibe. I'm here. That's all I need. So there you have it. I don't have an extensive or necessarily even excessive background with alcohol. Just a handful of key events and experiences that have shaped my relationship with and to it that have just ultimately led me to the place that I'm in now. And so whatever you choose to do with your life and what you choose to put in your body and what you choose to do with your body, just make sure that it's a conscious, educated, and sovereign choice for no one else but you. So that is all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, please do me a favor, share it out on social media, tag me, tag Embody Radio, send me a message if this resonated with you, if you need a little support on your alcohol removal journey. I actually did a group on Discord back in the fall called Conscious Consumption, where it was basically a challenge for everyone to go that month without alcohol. And it made a huge impact on those people's lives, even just getting them to identify why they participated in alcohol in the first place, and just kind of having the space to process and externalize how they felt going a month without it, and just kind of what that looked like for them, what it felt like for them, and having people to like cheer you on, hold you accountable. So if anybody is interested in us bringing that back and just kind of having it be like a rolling monthly thing, I'm open to it. If that's something you're interested in, let me know, shoot me a message. But that is it for me today. I fucking love you. Mean it. Till next time. I'll see you later.